Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. Trains, boats and planes take us from A to B, but perhaps these forms of travel can also insert themselves in kinds of interdimensional time slips in our own awareness. Here are 4 accounts from Weird World viewers where these modes of travel bizarrely reflect a different reality occurring in some kind of folding back of the time continuum. Reality reset. Recently, Dr. Kapil Patsaria was travelling from Gwalior to New Delhi on board the Vande Bharat Express train. His seat was in the C7 compartment, and when he reached the platform to board the train, he noticed 2 coaches between compartments C7 and C6. These were named E1 and E2. After the train arrived at the platform, he boarded it and took his seat in C7. A few minutes later, the ticket checker came and verified his ticket, and shortly after this, the catering service arrived and he asked for food. However, they refused to provide any, claiming that he had not booked any. He was certain he had booked food, but decided there must have been some mistake, so didn't worry about it. After reaching Agra station, most of the passengers disembarked from the train compartment. Kapil was comfortably seated when a passenger approached him and asked him to vacate the seat, claiming it was his. Kapil refused to get up, insisting that he was in his assigned seat. This led to a small argument, whereby the stranger informed him that he was in the wrong compartment, C6 instead of C7. Kapil countered his claim by stating that he had boarded the correct compartment, C7, and that the ticket checker had already confirmed his ticket. In addition to this, the display board, both inside and outside the train, as well as on the platform, clearly indicated C7. Kapil related that suddenly all the other passengers started shouting at him, accusing him of being in the wrong compartment. They insisted he look at the display board, and to his surprise, it now displayed signage indicating that it was the C6 compartment. Kapil felt shocked and that something must be wrong. However, he silently got up from his seat and started to move towards the C7 compartment. With his awareness from his earlier observation that there were 2 extra coaches between the designated compartments, he expected to cross through 2 compartments to reach C7 from C6. However, while making his way towards C7 with his luggage, he noticed something strange. This time, the C7 compartment was directly adjacent to the C6 compartment, and the 2 extra coaches were completely gone. He was again utterly shocked by this sudden change, and had no idea what had just happened. With no other option, he took his seat in the C7 compartment. After a few minutes, the ticket checker reappeared and asked him to show his ticket. Again, Kapil displayed it to him. However, this time, the ticket collector expressed disbelief and stated that he could not have boarded the train at Gwalior. Kapil reminded him that he had checked his ticket earlier and questioned how it was possible for him to claim that he had not boarded the train. This strange incident that occurred during Kapil's journey became even stranger upon reaching his destination of Delhi. He checked the train again from the outside, and there were no extra coaches between compartments C6 and C7. Equally, it would have been impossible for coaches to have been added or removed during his journey. He remains convinced that he switched from one similar dimension to another that day, and also troubled by the unnerving incident. He firmly believes that there are other people who might have experienced these glitches in the fabric of our reality. Flight back in time. While this account is well documented, Jodie Harnish met the man involved, former astronaut Deke Slayton during his lifetime and therefore loved to hear about his involvement in the incident. It was witnessed by many that on June 13, 1993, a small plane was causing problems at John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California. The plane was flying low over the houses, and commercial pilots were reporting that it was not just a nuisance, but dangerously getting in the way. The airport was receiving a lot of calls about the rogue plane, which wasn't responding to air traffic control, and the callers all gave the same ID number for the plane. The plane was traced to Deke Slayton, a former US Air Force pilot, aeronautical engineer and test pilot, who was selected as one of the original NASA Mercury 7 astronauts and also helped develop the space shuttle. Despite his credentials, this behaviour was considered beyond the pale, and the Federal Aviation Administration sent him a letter to say it wasn't going to tolerate such unauthorised flights. The FAA was to receive a reply from Deke Slayton's wife, who wanted to know what kind of sick joke they were playing. At the time of this event, Deke Slayton was dying of brain cancer at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle. His plane was on display in a museum, and the engine had been removed, and so there was no way Deke Slayton was flying his plane around John Wayne Airport. But all the witnesses claimed otherwise. The much confirmed sighting was as if he had simply revisited an earlier, happier time in a perhaps less crowded sky in his comfort zone of solo flight. Disaster revisited. Nick Ainsworth received this personal account from his uncle, who was a retired sailor and used to work on board the Great Lakes freighter, the SS Arthur M. Anderson. The massive cargo ship would haul iron ore and limestone across the Great Lakes region of North America. One day, in November 2007, at around 7 p.m, the ship was crossing Lake Superior on its way to Cleveland, Ohio, when the crew started receiving distress calls on their radio. The unknown vessel sending the calls was claiming to be the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald famously sank on November 10, 1975, in a high storm, taking all 29 crew members with it. Coincidentally, the SS Arthur M. Anderson is known for having been the last ship to be in contact with the lake freighter before the tragic occurrence. Nick's uncle said that at first the crew thought that all the calls were some kind of distasteful prank. That is, until they checked the radar and found that there were no other ships around for at least 70 nautical miles. The range on the ship's radios is only 60 nautical miles. He said that the panicking voice they heard from the radio described a heavy storm and high winds and declared that the ship's crew were having a hard time holding their own. Nick's uncle said that you could hear true fear in the man's voice over the radio. But the strange thing was, there was currently no storm at all. In fact, the water was calm and the night was clear. Nick's uncle described that around 8 p.m, the distress calls on the radio came to an abrupt stop, leaving the whole room in a terrifying silence. For a full hour, his crew had listened to the horrifying crisis unfold on the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, which then came to a sudden end. The radio stayed quiet for the rest of the night, but nobody was able to sleep as they were all so unnerved by what they had just witnessed. They were well aware of a kind of ironic synchronicity in this event. This is given that not only was the ship his uncle was on, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, the sister ship to the Edmund Fitzgerald, but it was also the last ship to make contact with the Edmund Fitzgerald in 1975 when she sank. Nick queries whether his uncle and his shipmates may have actually made contact with the ghosts of the crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald, or if there could be another explanation for this occurrence, such as a time slip back to that devastating event. It is definitely one of the most chilling accounts he's ever heard. Eerie Footage. Rob, in Adelaide, South Australia, still remembers this strange event which occurred around 1993. He and a friend had returned to her home in the evening after they had both attended a presentation. This was in the day of VHS videos, and Rob had recorded some footage on a home video that he wanted her to see. He began trying to line up the video at the right spot while she was in another room. The part that started playing was home video footage of his young son playing at home, something that he had shot a few years earlier and was familiar with. However, suddenly the video changed, and what was being shown was a private jet being towed into a large hangar. He was shocked and perplexed by the visuals, as he had never been in a situation to video this. He called out to his friend to come and have a look at the footage as the moving images continued. The plane was eventually towed alongside where the camera was filming from. The plane stopped, and the camera then filmed the door of the plane opening up, still appearing not only unfamiliar but quite bizarre. Rather than the usual plane door, this was one that opened upwards, with a smaller lower section opening downwards that also contained fold-out stairs. By this time, Rob's mind was feeling completely confused as he wondered what on earth was going on. Then that piece of footage stopped and the continuing images of his son played. Rob felt a little unhinged as he continued to tell his friend that he didn't film this. He quickly rewound the video, finding the original recording of his son playing. However, this time it just continued as normal. The segment showing the strange plane was missing, again completely inexplicable. Now they were both astounded and perplexed. His friend was to have a strange reaction as quite a few years later he started to ask her, "Do you remember that night when we watched that video?" And she cut him off and said she didn't want to talk about it. To this day, Rob can still see that plane footage in his mind 30 years later. The experience was so creepy that he's only ever told 2 other people about the event. They believed him whilst finding it hard to believe, and so the redeeming fact was that he was able to say that he wasn't alone or hallucinating, that a friend witnessed it with him. Perhaps a glimpse of something happening in another time dimension.